Is RJ Barrett the star, or is Cam Reddish the star?
Would you fall for me like I fall for you?
Alright, everybody, welcome back to another episode of NBA Now. It's your boy Dom, and we're back at it today. So, today, we are talking about the New York Knicks and the recent trade of Cam Reddish. Now, I know I'm a couple days late on this. I haven't uploaded in a few days, so I apologize about that, but we're getting back on that grind. And yeah, we're starting off with this video. Expect a Ja Morant video tomorrow. But yeah, with that, we're getting right into things. So, Cam Reddish was traded to the New York Knicks, right? It was a pretty crazy move. I know it had been getting talked about there for a little bit. And it ended up happening. And it was kind of a surprise that he went to the Knicks. I mean, there was teams thrown out. I know the Lakers tried to make a late run at him, but they weren't willing to offer that first-round pick, and that was the big thing that had been kind of coming out for months, where it was kind of they need to get the first-round pick back in order to trade him, and that's exactly what the Knicks were willing to give up, which is it's crazy to think about because it opens up so many possibilities, but I might have another video about that coming out later this week, so this might be a big thing on the channel for like a week or so. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about the fact that the Hawks didn't want to pay him. You know, this is a guy that still at this point hasn't played a game for the New York Knicks. Now it is 2:40 in the morning on January 18th, so he should be playing for them here fairly soon. But you know, I don't know, it's just kind of crazy to think about that. What ended up happening for the trade, though, is the Knicks got rid of Kevin Knox finally, too, in the trade. And they sent Kevin Knox and a 2022 first-round pick from the Charlotte Hornets. So that pick is protected, though, I believe. And a 20 for Cam Reddish. And then the Hawks sent Cam Reddish and Solomon Hill and a 2025 second-round pick from Brooklyn. Then New York waived Ryan Arcidiacono to make the move happen. And it's crazy to think about because, you know, Cam Reddish was the 10th overall pick in the draft. He was a guy that, you know, kind of came over in the Luka trade, so it was him and it was Trey, and that was what was traded for Luka. And they just traded him for a first-round pick that's protected. And Kevin Knox, who is ass. I don't know. That's what Knicks fans are going to want to hear, too. Like, he's ass. He hasn't done much. In fact, if I go look up his stats at this point in the year, I didn't even have these pulled up because I didn't think I was going to even spend this much time on Kevin Knox regarding this trade. But he's averaging 3 points on the year. I mean, this is not a crazy good guy. So he got traded to the Hawks. He hasn't played for the Hawks yet either. And so far, when you look at his career, his minutes are down drastically this year. I mean, his first year, he was playing 28 minutes a game. He averaged 12 points. Looked like he had promise. The next year, his minutes dropped by 10 minutes. His points cut in half. The next year, his minutes dropped a little bit more. He went down to 3 points on 39% from the field, which was the highest shooting percentage of his career. I want you to remember that. 39% from the field was the highest of his career so far. And then he went down even lower to 3.6 this year, and he's shooting 37% from the field. His shooting splits of his career go 37%, 35%, 39%, 37%. So terrible shooting. His defense just never quite came along in the way that it was looked supposed to be. And so he's on the Hawks. You know, maybe he turns this into something good for him. But at this point, he's been ass. But maybe he does something like Stanley Johnson, becomes a decent role player. Obviously, we've seen what he's done for the Lakers. But yeah, I mean, back to Cam Reddish. This is a guy that, I mean, he's been not bad. He's shown glimpses of stardom. So far in his career, he's averaging 11.1 points, 3.4 rebounds, and 1.4 assists. On this year, though, he's averaging a little bit higher than his career on 11.9 points, 2.5 rebounds, which is lower than his career average, and 1.1 assists, which is lower than his career average. But I think some of that comes with his minutes per game, because when you're looking at his minutes per game, his rookie season, he played 26. Last year, he played 28. And then this year he's playing 23, but he's still averaging Well, first off, he's shooting it the best from the field that he's ever shot. He's shooting over 40% from the field finally, after shooting 38 and 36% his first 2 years. And then he's shooting his best percent from three ever, which is 37.9, almost 38% from three, which is a little bit above league average, which is nice. That's close to a 40% three-point shooter, which is really big. I know last year was a really bad year for him as he only shot 26%, but it was in only 26 games played, so it's not a crazy sample size. But yeah, he's averaging 11.9 points, doing the best of his career scoring-wise. I think, he shows those glimpses of stardom. And although some of his other game isn't quite doing that well, yes, all of his shooting splits are up. His shooting percentage, his three-point shooting percentage, his free throw percentage is at 90% this year. All that is up. But some of his other stats aren't as high, like his rebounding and stuff like that. And some of that comes with the personnel on the Hawks. They have a lot of rebounders on that team. Like Clint Capella, like a John Collins, like a Danilo Gallinari, like a Okongwu. Plenty of guys on that team that can get, double-digit rebounds that kind of, when you're a wing guy, you're not going to get as many boards, which makes total sense. So maybe we'll see that go up a little bit more with the New York Knicks, as, yes, they've got some rebounders on that team, but I think if they could get more help at, like, the wing positions, that would help them there. And yeah, so, I mean, Cam Reddish has been solid. I think sometimes the one play that pops into my mind where it's like, okay, this guy's either going to be a star or he's just going to be a clown, is where he does that 360 layup. I cannot remember who it was, but the first thing I thought of, like, he did like 3 rotations. It was like a 720 layup, and he chucked that shit off the backboard. And I was like, oh my god, this guy is the Tasmanian Devil. He looked like he was straight out of Looney Tunes. And he shows some of that, and it's like, well, if he did that under control, that's a crazy layup to pull off. But he loses a little bit of control. So that's something that's, going to be fine-tuned, I think. But I think he's a hard worker. From what I can tell, him going to Duke, him going to Atlanta, he looks to be a hard worker. He looks to want to earn his minutes. When he goes out there, I feel like he tries to make the most of it, hence some of those things where, he kind of looks a little wild because he's trying to do his best and really make something happen and get a lot of minutes, especially when, you're in Atlanta and you're really buried in that depth chart. I mean, Atlanta's a good team. Yes, right now they are in 12th behind the Knicks right now. They are 18 and 25, but you've got a hierarchy on that team, right? Obviously, you've got their main guy in Trae Young. He's their number one option. But you've also got guys like John Collins, like I mentioned, Clint Capella, Bogdanovich, Gallinari, Kevin Huerter. They put him above the depth chart over Cam Reddish because they drafted him with Trae Young, and they kind of want that to be their 1-2 in the backcourt, right? You've got guys like DeAndre Hunter, who was drafted in the same draft, but he was drafted higher, so obviously he's going to be higher in the hierarchy, and stuff like that, where all these guys, whether they be vets or whatever it is, they're just higher in that hierarchy. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys. So at best, he's 8 in their scoring hierarchy, and he's still averaging over 10 points per game on relatively good shooting. That's solid. I mean, and that shows potential, and it's interesting because now when you go to the Knicks, it's kind of like, okay, where is he going to be on the hierarchy, right? If I'm talking about hierarchy, well, you got Julius Randle, you got RJ Barrett, and then after that, it's really whoever the hell wants to take off. I mean, yes, you've got Derrick Rose, you've got Kemba, you've got Evan Fournier, Alec Burks, even Quentin Grimes, Nerlens Noel, Emmanuel Quickley. All these guys, they can score a little bit, but Mitchell Robinson isn't very much of a scorer. So if Cam Reddish can really take off, he can be that number 2, number 3 guy for them if he kind of taps into his potential. And speaking of that, now I think we look at some of his guys that he's going to get paired with. And we'll talk about Julius Randle here in a minute, but I want to look at RJ Barrett. I want to look at his teammate from Duke, the number 3 overall pick in his draft. Number 2 was Ja, who again I said we're going to be talking about tomorrow. But yeah, he's a number 2 overall. I don't know why I want him to be the number 2 pick. He was projected to be the number 1 in high school, but he's a number 3 overall pick. Coming out of Duke, goes to the New York Knicks after the Knicks fall in the lottery, down to number 3, and he's been solid, right? His rookie year averages 14 points, sophomore year gets 17, and this year he's a little bit lower at 16.9. But his field goal percentage is been over 40 his whole career. Last year it was at 44%. Obviously, the Knicks' big season where they made a big-time playoff push and were able to make it into the playoffs and stuff like that for the first time in a little while. And then three-point percentage-wise, I think we see a consistent progression, although he has regressed a bit from last year. Because his first year in the league, he shot 32%, so a little bit below 1/3 of his shots are going in. And then I want to say that's a little bit, because I want to say 1/3 of your shots going in is about league average, or it's like 35%, something like that. I don't remember that off the top of my head. I used to remember it, but I cannot remember it anymore. But then, last year he shot over 40% from 3, which is really big for him. Now it's only on 4 attempts, but that's still, he's shooting them. This year he upped his attempts to 5, and that dropped his shooting percentage a little bit lower to 35%, although still respectable. Again, around, maybe slightly above league average type thing going on there. His free throws have never been fantastic, shooting 70% this year. But he's a guy that, he still shows potential. I don't know if he'll ever be, I don't think he can be a number 1 on a championship team. I think his ceiling is slightly lower than a Jaylen Brown, or maybe at a Jaylen Brown type of level, where I just never would see a Jaylen Brown as a number 1 on a championship team, but I could see Brown as a 2 or a 3 on a championship team to the right guys. So RJ Barrett's definitely a solid piece for the Knicks and stuff like that. And I think pairing, we've seen his playmaking develop and stuff like that. Maybe that doesn't quite show all the way in the box stats and stuff like that, where he's averaging 2.4 assists on the season, which is currently a career low. But we've seen his playmaking develop. And I think what could be interesting here is if you start looking at these wing combinations where you've got any number of your guards, whether it be an Alec Burks, whether it be an Evan Fournier, Quentin Grimes, Emmanuel Quickly, Derrick Rose, or Kemba Walker, any of those, 7 guys I think I just listed off, that are starting at that point guard position. And if we see Cam Reddish kind of start to bring his thing together, then you've got a big, lengthy 2 who's like 6'8" in Cam Reddish. Then you've got another lengthy guy at small forward in RJ Barrett, who, how tall is RJ Barrett? He's 6'6", so he's a little bit shorter actually than Cam Reddish, but I think Cam Reddish would probably play the 2 and Barrett would play the 3. I think defensively, Barrett matches up well against 3s, but it's not, they're the wings, it doesn't really matter. I'm just throwing out positions for those that really want the 2 or the 3, but at the end of the day, they're on the wing, right? So you got those 2 guys on the wing, you get a Julius Randle in the 4 or something like that, and then a shot blocker in Mitchell Robinson or Nerlens Noel at the 5. That's a pretty good defensive lineup. Obviously Thibodeau wants good defense, and that can kind of mask somebody like a Kemba Walker or a Derrick Rose a little bit more, who both might be a little bit older and smaller guards. Like Quickly's not a great defender because he's a smaller guard and stuff like that. So you can kind of use that Brad Stevens model where with Isaiah Thomas and stuff like that and mask them a little bit. Okay, sorry, my mic accidentally unplugged, but what I was saying was mask them a little bit with a more of a complex of defensive scheme with a strong defensive head coach, which is what they have in Tom Thibodeau, right? And if you do that, I think that kind of brings you back to what you were last year, a super strong defensive team. And then if Cam Reddish can kind of tap into that offensive potential, then you see what you needed this year more than anything, and what you really leaned into was a lot of offense, and that hurt your defense a lot. But Cam Reddish out there can help bring back that defense, because then you're not running 2 small guards out there. Because if you have RJ Barrett at the 3, you're really hurting yourself defensively, because what that does for you is you end up with lineups where you've got a Kemba and an Emmanuel Quickly on the floor, or an Evan Fournier and an Alec Burks. And yeah, Evan Fournier and Alec Burks, they might be a little bit more lengthy, right? Alec Burks, I want to say, is about 6'5", 6'6". Same with Fournier, so they're not like super tiny guards. But Fournier hasn't lived up to his contract, first of all. I just want to throw that in there. But, both decent-ish guys. But they're not great defensively. I think Alec Burks is probably the better of the 2, although not fantastic. They're a little bit lengthy, but they're meh kind of defensively. And if you have both those guys out there at the guard position, that leaves a lot of scoring potential for especially elite guards. And I think that's what really hurts the Knicks is elite perimeter scoring. Because although you have some perimeter defenders and stuff like that, a lot of what made the Knicks really good last year was the hustle, and the fact that you couldn't just pick a guy and just go straight at him and just destroy them. Because last year, I think, even having a guy like Elfrid Payton, right, who's a little bit better, or not better, I think he's worse than any of the guards they have, really, for the most part, other than, maybe a couple of the younger guys that really haven't quite developed yet, like a Quentin Grimes maybe at this point is probably worse than a, what the hell, I just said his name. Anyways, Elfrid Payton. It's probably a little bit worse than Elfrid Payton at this point, but like Elfrid Payton's like a 6'4" point guard, so if he's out there and then you have Barrett at the 2, that's like 6'4", 6'6", it's a lot better defensively, and stuff like that, versus having versus having RJ Barrett at the 3. Now, RJ Barrett plays a 2 as well and stuff like that. And I guess, if we go look at like their last game that they played, I can kind of see where he was playing there. So let's take the loss that they had to the Hornets, right? And if you go look at that, for their starters, they started RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, Alec Burks, Mitchell Robinson, and Evan Fournier. So again, RJ Barrett there at the 3, which is kind of what I was talking about, which hurts yes, it might help your scoring, but it hurts your defense a lot. Unless you have a lengthy guy like Cam Reddish out there, which is why it's such a perfect pickup for this team. Plus, I think chemistry-wise, he's going to fit in super well. He's going to be a hustle guy that's going to work with Thibodeau and try and get better. And I think a lot of his defensive potential is really going to get tapped into. And I think if we don't see that this year, what we'll really see is we'll see that next year, right? And that's a big reason why the Hawks traded him, is they didn't want to end up having to pay him just because they had all those guys above him in the hierarchy, which I didn't quite mention in the Hawks part. At the start of the video, but that's a big reason why they didn't keep him, which makes sense. If they feel that Huerter, and I disagree in that take, but if they feel that Huerter's a better fit next to Trae Young, and that's the guy that they want to pay, then yes, pay Huerter, get rid of Reddish, move on, right? They play the same position. Now I think Reddish defensive potential makes him such a better fit next to Trae Young, but that's another conversation for another day. And maybe we'll talk about that when we look back on the trade in like a year or something like that. But yeah, I think now we move to Julius Randle. Julius Randle, the star of the team, right? He won Most Improved Player last year, in disagreement from myself at the time. Though maybe the guys that I thought were above him in the race didn't quite deserve it. I don't know. Nobody was crazy last year for Most Improved Player. I think it was a pretty tight race, but he won it last year. He led them to the playoffs. And it was pretty solid. It was obviously the best year of his career, makes an all-star team, but he gets kind of exposed in the playoffs. Now, in the regular season, he averaged 24 points, 10 rebounds, he was getting almost a steal per game, he was getting 6 assists per game. I mean, he was doing stuff, right? He was doing stuff. He was shooting 45% from the field, he was shooting 40% from 3, like, he was all over the court. This year, it's dropped off a little bit. Now, obviously, games-wise, if you're comparing it, 41 games this year to 71 last year, he's got a lot of games where he could still make this up and kind of turn the season around a little bit more. But he's 27 now, kind of entering his prime if he didn't enter it last year. He is averaging 19 points a game again, which is similar to what he did the first year in New York, and he's been a little bit more shot chucky like he was the first year in New York. Now, his field goal percentage is worse, actually. And his first year in New York fans hated him. And he shot 46% from the field. This year he's shooting 41% from the field, which is a lot worse. And then you move over to his three-point percentage, which followed the trend of his first year in New York, where in his first year in New York, he shot 27%. And last year, he had pretty much a fluke season if you're looking at his career averages, because for his career average, 27%, 27%, 22%, 34%, 27% his first year in New York, 41% from 3 last year, and then 31% this year. So, really it shows that last year might have been a fluke when you're looking at it percentage-wise is from 3, and then his scoring kind of reverted back down. His big scoring years are really the years where he's kind of the main guy, and it kind of comes out of nowhere a little bit, where like for that one year with the Pelicans, AD wasn't really playing, and they ended up trading him afterwards, and so Randle got a ton of run, and people weren't really expecting it, and he was kind of able to take advantage of that and get himself 21 points per game that year, right? And then he shot super well from the field. He shot 52% from the field that year, and he even shot 34% from 3. So he had a pretty fantastic year, hence why he got paid from the Knicks. And then we saw last year, obviously, he kind of, Knicks fans didn't like him his first year in New York, kind of has all that turmoil and stuff like that. But then he turns it around, has a big time year. And then, again, things kind of pick up and people figure him out a little bit more. So, Knicks fans I've seen want him traded. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. Again, maybe another video for another day. But I think, Cam Reddish complements him well as well, because he's, again, that lengthy defensive wing who also shows some potential more perimeter scoring, which obviously helps Randle out in turn, because when Randle is getting targeted as your primary and only scorer on your team, it makes it a lot easier for other teams to defend you and kind of shut you down a little bit. So, yeah, that's going to be it, honestly. I'm super interested in this trade. I can't wait to see how Cam Reddish does. I think he's got a big chance to become a star, maybe become an all-star for this team. And things are looking up, I think, for New York fans. Maybe, yes, you guys are out of the playoff race right at this current, well, not out of the playoff race, but out of the playoff picture, I guess, sort of, at this point. I don't know, whatever. You are 22-22, sitting at 500 at the 11 seed, so you're not in the play-in yet. Where Boston is 23-22, holding that 10 seed at this current point. But the East can fluctuate just like that, because if you're looking really up to the 6th seed at the 76ers, who are 25-18, which are right out of that top 5, which will have 27 or 28 wins for that top 5. Then you're looking at Charlotte at 24-20, Washington at 23-21, Toronto at 21-20, and then again Boston, like I said, New York, and then Atlanta's 18-25. So any of those teams really have a chance to make the playoffs and the play-in. And New York, I think with this acquisition, has put themselves in a position to try and even push for that further. So, yeah, I think Reddish is going to do well for them. And it's not really a high-risk thing. It's, you traded away Kevin Knox and a protected pick that wasn't even your own. So even if you don't make the playoffs, you still have your own first-round pick. No sweat, no harm about it. You bring back Reddish, and I think he gets even better for you next year. So Knicks fans, if you are a Knicks fan watching this video, you guys should be super happy with Reddish. I'm excited to see what he does. Obviously, I think I've mentioned on this channel before, but I am a Duke fan, so obviously Reddish is one of my guys. And I guess since it's in the end of the video, so whoever's watching, I was talking about RJ Barrett being the second overall pick earlier in the video, which I thought was kind of funny because obviously he wasn't. But funnily enough, I thought that Reddish should have got drafted over him. And I think here we're going to see who becomes a star for New York. I think it might be a little bit of a battle, and it's going to be, is RJ Barrett the star, or is Cam Reddish the star for the New York Knicks? So, yeah, super interested to see how that plays out. Again, if you guys enjoyed, please drop a like and subscribe for more. I am trying to really get this channel going and back on track. I know I haven't uploaded in a little bit, so I apologize about that. And stay tuned for tomorrow's video, for the John Morant video. I'm sure you guys will be interested about that. But that's been your boy Dom, and I will catch you all next time. Peace out, guys.